A 16-year-old boy holds up his latest report card. He scored a 91%. His face beams with genuine pride as he hands it to his father. His father looks at the paper, pauses, and asks, "Sharma Uncle's son got 96. What happened?" To get that 91, he studied for 3 weeks straight. He gave up his weekends, sacrificed his sleep, and sidelined the version of himself that used to laugh easily. In the brief moment before his father spoke, he felt, for the first time in months, like he had done enough. 2 seconds later, that feeling was gone entirely. The father in this scenario is not a villain. He loves his son completely and without question. But that care has become tangled in a behavioral pattern that is much older, much darker, and incredibly difficult to see clearly. This is the psychology of the comparative parent, a person who is entirely incapable of looking at their child and simply saying, "That is enough. You are enough." This behavior usually begins innocuously, out in the wider cultural ecosystem. A casual question at a dinner party about where a neighbor's daughter is applying for college, a WhatsApp group for school parents, quiet observations at wedding receptions and school gates. Very quickly, these community spaces function as an invisible scorecard. In collective cultures, particularly in South Asian households, a child's achievement acts as communal currency. It is tied directly to the family's name, the parents' face among their siblings, and their public pride at the next gathering. In this environment, the living room suddenly feels smaller. A child's B+ feels worse on paper because of its context. The child is no longer being measured against their own potential, but against the lingering ghosts of other people's children. To understand why a parent enforces this pressure, we have to look one generation back. In almost every case, the parent doing the comparing was themselves a compared child. They grew up in a home where love arrived with conditions, and where the neighbor's son was a permanent, invisible guest at the dinner table. This diagram illustrates social comparison theory. It shows a central figure projecting lines outward to measure themselves against surrounding peers. The theory argues that humans naturally evaluate their own worth by measuring themselves against the people around them rather than an internal standard. These parents rarely sit down and consciously choose to inflict this specific pressure on their kids. They simply pass down the only language of motivation they ever absorbed. Patterns like this travel through families seamlessly, long before anyone is old enough to question them. The father demanding to know why his son didn't beat Sharma Uncle's kid is, psychologically, still that same wounded boy, still trying to exorcise the invisible ghost of his own neighbor's success. Identity enmeshment occurs when a parent's social identity fuses with their child's achievements. As two distinct circles move together and overlap, the parent's internal status markers are engulfed inside the child's circle. Because of this, a peer's child scoring higher feels like a physical blow. The enmeshed parent experiences their child's underperformance as their own personal failure. Their status, pride, and standing live precariously inside their child's report card. Take a 16-year-old like Kabir. He has a natural gift for music, but his father works in engineering, and his father's colleague just had a son clear a massive entrance exam. Whenever Kabir picks up his guitar, he feels his father's immediate disapproval. The guitar becomes a confession of failure, sidelined by his father's anxious need to maintain status. The father is rational to want a secure future for his son. His error is believing that Kabir's security must look identical to the security of someone else's child. Here is the gap that most comparing parents cannot see. The parent thinks they are communicating a belief in the child's potential, but the child hears that their parent's love is conditional on how they perform against others. Developmental psychologists note that children raised in this environment develop contingent self-worth. Their sense of value is permanently borrowed from external benchmarks. It is dependent on outperforming the person next to them, and it is never truly owned. This comparison follows children into adulthood. Consider Nisha, a 28-year-old teacher who finds deep meaning in her work, yet her mother quietly judges her because a cousin recently married a wealthy software engineer in the US. Nisha is building a fulfilling life, but her mother is reading someone else's map. These adults carry 3 specific wounds: chronic imposter syndrome, an inability to feel joy in their own successes because the point was always beating someone else, and a fractured relationship with their own true desires. When achievement is used as a shield against a parent's disappointment, it loses its meaning. Many adults reach high-level career milestones only to feel a hollow sense of exhaustion, still haunted by the illusion that they are falling behind. The parent who compares is usually operating from a massive blind spot. Their intense focus on grades and salaries is a fear response. It is a terror of an unpredictable future, dressed up as motivation to protect their child from struggle. To cure this anxiety, psychologists recommend building a secure base. Here, a solid, unmoving foundation sits beneath the child. Notice the independent upward arrows growing directly from the figure, unlinked from the surrounding peers. Research shows that children raised with this kind of unconditional positive regard thrive and take more risks. Because these children know that their parents' love is not at stake during an exam or a job interview, they develop genuine intrinsic motivation. They are allowed to be human, which means they recover from setbacks much faster than their heavily compared peers. With love decoupled from performance, these children develop an internal drive. They achieve from a place of existing security rather than a desperate need to earn their value. Breaking this cycle requires a deeply unfamiliar shift for parents who never experienced it themselves. It starts by asking, "How did it feel?" instead of "What did you get?" It means actively separating the child's inherent worth from their statistical output. We return to that living room. The same 16-year-old boy. The same 91% on the report card. But this time, the father looks at the grade, looks at his son, and says, "You worked really hard for this." The boy looks up. The paper in his hand doesn't drop. A child is not a parent's second chance at their own life. A parent's true job is simply to make the child feel safe enough to discover what the best means for themselves.